So basically, what's to say that our religion is better than any other one, and what's to say we even need a religion per se? We can't just have spiritual, I guess, just be good people and kind of believe in a spiritual thing, and, you know, that'll get what religion is trying to get at.
Yeah, it's in the book.
What you described is the generic understanding of religion today.
Okay.
I recently read a book. It was a transcription of what are called the monk debates.
The what?
Monk debates.
Okay.
It was specifically a debate between Christopher Hitchens, the atheist, and Tony Blair, who's a former Prime Minister of England, who is very much in terms of now runs a religious foundation supporting religion in general and so forth, or a faith-based foundation, I think he calls it. And the thing they argued was basically, is there any value to religion? And when you really get down to it, what they really argued was, what is religion? To Hitchens, if you define religion in its very technical sense, with different religions, he said religion has caused a tremendous amount of war and hatred in the world. You know, you now have it that you know, this guy hates that guy hates that guy. You have ISIS. You know, we were persecuted by the Inquisition. And there were, you know, in Europe you had fights between the Protestants and the Catholics and so forth. So Hitchens' argument was religion is basically, you know, I'm right, you're wrong, and you're going to hell.
Or I'm going to kill you, or both.
Well, because you're going to hell, you're, you know,
not worth living.
Right, I've heard that argument before, that religion is the greatest evil, and all wars come from religion.
Right, there's actually an argument regarding Hitler. There's actually an argument regarding Hitler. So people try to say the greatest evil is done by atheists, and they point to Hitler as the riot, and then they point to Stalin as the riot as well. And other people say, no, the truth of the matter is Hitler was not really an atheist. Hitler was actually a somewhat obviously estranged, but he was actually a Roman Catholic.
Was he a cultist?
No, he's actually, there's arguments he was a Roman.
No, they had a video about like the cult and Nazis.
The fact is that there's an argument he really was a Roman Catholic, and that, you see, evil comes from religion, and they looked at Torquemada and the Inquisition and so forth. Anyways, Hitchens took the argument that looking at religion can cause a lot of problems. Tony Blair, who's a very devout person, actually converted to Catholicism. When you read about his description of religion, the former Prime Minister of England, his description of religion is a very mature description. What's religion about? You know, so, and this is really the way most people think in terms of freedom of religion nowadays. Religion is basically force. It says there's some spiritual force in the world, and the differences between religions is then understood to be the way you want to express your spirituality. But the fact is that religion is just belief. You know, we're all believing the same thing. We all stand for the same values, and basically religion is into, you know, caring for others and helping out others and so forth, and that religion really promotes it, and that really develops the idea of freedom of religion. So what you've described is basically the generic attitude of religion to most people, which is that there's some kind of spiritual force in the world, and people are struggling to try to get it through how to relate to it, and that there may have been certain people, but all the different forms of religions is the struggles of people trying to relate to the spiritual power in the world.
But what's that in terms of evil? Was that so? That argument that
evil doesn't really end.
No. Evil are the people who are against that. big power.
So, like, is it a fair argument to say that religion is responsible for the majority of the wars of today?
Well, according to the perception, depends what you mean by what's good and evil. The fact of the matter is, if you define evil as causing hatred between people, a lot of hatred throughout history has developed because of religion.
Yes.
Okay?
I would say it's more due to tribe versus tribe mentality. I think that.
Yeah, but religion became this. It became the.
Religion.
No. In a certain way, you're right. But the fact is religions. Which we're not. You're right. That's where it's tribe. But the fact is religions became a way of defining different tribes. I mean, the fact is, if you look at ISIS today. Right? ISIS kills people who don't share their religious beliefs because I'm right, you're wrong, and you're going to hell. You're evil. And then people look at ISIS as evil because basically they're killing other people. And the point is that what do you define as evil? To an ISIS person, the people they're killing are evil. To us, to most North Americans, they look upon
ISIS is killing.
they look at ISIS as evil for doing such killing. But the fact is the way most people look at religion is that there's a nice spiritual force in the world, and religion promotes caring for others, goodness, and so forth and so forth. That's what religion is about. And if you look at it that way, basically the divisions between religion become a problem, but there's this general idea that, and then the way you accept the divisions is sort of like, is that it's your methodology of how you wish to do your spirituality. And that really stands within the more liberal views of every form of religion. Where I remember there was a rector of the United Church of Canada who says he doesn't know if he believes in the New Testament, the stories in the New Testament, but the fact is that he believes in the values as being promoted by the church.
Isn't that weak?
It's what's someone would say. It's a general perception of there's some spirituality in the world, and human beings struggled with how they're going to actualize this spirituality. So throughout history, you had people, not always right on, but you had people trying to struggle with how to actualize their spirituality. There's some people who had some greater connection to spirituality and so forth, and I don't know that much about the Baha'i faith, but that seems to be part and parcel of what the Baha'i is about, in the sense that throughout history there are different people who in their own language, their own way of doing it, found a way of expressing spirituality, and the differences between religion is really methodology. And people took it very seriously. Now we're more mature. We understand the methodology is, hey, that's your way of doing it, this is my way of doing it, but we're all trying to be good people. And that creates a better an idea of freedom of religion and caring and so forth. Okay, and it's no one's arguing this is really true or whatever. Okay. The thing is that viewpoint may, I'm sure the Reform Judaism has a way of relating to that viewpoint. The fact is, if you look at more liberal forms of all the religions, they don't get into the historical validity of any of the religious events. That's why I said the rector of the United Church of Canada, he basically, if I remember correctly, he sort of basically made the point he doesn't believe in the miracles that Jesus did, even as the rector of the United Church, because that's not what really is important. The stories are sort of like stories to enhance the value. Wait a second. Reform Judaism also doesn't believe in Torah Messina.
How's that sustainable though? It's not.
Because at its basic, every religion is basically be good to each other.
Right. So therefore,
all of that is not a terrible thing.
What occurs is a much more generic form, where there's respect for the methodology difference, and you find that people say, "Hey, I'm getting involved I'm a good guy. I'm into tikkun olam or whatever other term you want to use for helping out others, and the way I do it in my spirituality is that you use a Christmas tree, I use a Hanukkah, but really we're trying to do the same thing. I remember once when I was much younger, I remember I was doing a class. It was an afternoon Hebrew high school class, and this girl who was obviously growing up with a non-Jew, we were talking about intermarriage, and she got really into it because I presume she had a non-Jewish boyfriend, and she sort of said to me, "Come on, Rabbi, what's the real difference?" So we get together for family meal. We call it the Pesach Seder, but it's really family get together. They do the same thing. They call it Easter dinner. But what are they both doing? It's just family gets together and shares warmth and caring. The fact is that that's the way most people look at religion, and they get into their ritual as a way of pushing it and so forth, and that's the way you learn tolerance for others. I'm doing it this way, you're doing it that way, but we're all good people. Now, the fact is that in a certain way it's much better than everyone killing each other. And in a certain way we've clearly benefited from the value of freedom of religion. That's been very beneficial to us as Jews living in America.
But this is all supporting.
What?
This is all supporting the theory that religion is
so the fact is what you're really dealing with, what you really have to deal with is how can you be a person who really believes in certain religious fundamentals, such as Torah Sinai, or such as this vision of God, and that, specifically this vision, and relate to other people who have a different vision of the deity.
You like baseball, I like baseball, we both like baseball.
Yeah, but that works if you talk about what we both like. It's like you're into exercise. Okay, I am like getting exercise through baseball, you like getting exercise through tennis, but we're both really into exercise. But the fact is, I might argue with you that tennis is better than baseball is better than tennis, but the truth is, it's really what the exercise is. Baseball is perhaps not the best example.
The point is just like it's the focus.
But the fact is that all looks at methodology. That's not what a religion believes in. A religion believes in this is the truth, and others don't have the truth.
All religions roughly have their own supernatural occurrences, which many persist till this day. There are they have their exorcisms and whatnot, and some of them are pretty much supernatural.
So how do you
say that Judaism is the one true one? Basically, what I'm saying is, you have people who go
right. So there's people, when you start talking in terms of miracles or something like that. So the Rambam himself says that you shouldn't believe in Torah because he says Moshe Rabbeinu never presented a miracle to prove. I mean, you have to see the Rambam. He says miracles don't prove Torah. There's a whole argument like that. The fact is that's a powerful statement of the Rambam.
Does that argue with our entire Masorah?
No. The fact is, he argues that we don't prove our Masorah through miracles.
So what's Torah, Moshe, Sinai, Yitzis, Mitzrayim, and the whole thing?
That's not the proof. That is the Masorah. That's not the proof of the Masorah. The question is, what is the Masorah? So he says the one exception is you believe in Har Sinai because you experienced God, but it wasn't because someone did a miracle. In other words, most people say, hey, here's a miracle, that you're talking about someone does a supernatural event and says, oh, you see, this guy must be a special guy because it's a supernatural event. He says Moshe Rabbeinu never proved himself by doing a miracle. He says, and when we accept the Torah, it was an event that everyone experienced. So it's a little bit of a difference than what I said before.
But it's still a mass.
Yeah, that's true. A mass. But the fact is, you're right. But that's you personally had it. What he was talking about is someone using a miracle to prove that he's the truth, which is what you're talking about.
Didn't Eliyahu do that?
Yes, Eliyahu tried doing it, but the fact is that usually people say, I'm going to do this miracle now, believe me. He says that's not a good argument, but that's the way most religions happen. Because a person does a miracle, and then you believe he's someone special.
But stuff happened like that in Judaism.
Okay, but that wasn't the proof. You're right, stuff happened like that, but it wasn't really the best proof. It's not the best proof. Rabbi says it's not the best proof. It's not the real proof.
So what's the real proof?
Okay, so he says the real proof for our Sinai is because you experienced our Sinai. Well, the Klal experienced it. The people experienced it. So now the question is that why do you accept this as true and so forth and so forth? Someone comes up and does a miracle and says, now believe me when I tell you it's true, they have the same problem. The point is that this is what you're really getting at, is the fact that people try and prove the uniqueness of a certain individual. This Rabbi, he did this nays, he told him this, said this, and it turned out to be true. Like you hear all these stories that seem to imply, see, he had some Ruach HaKodesh or whatever. So what you're pointing out is every religion has that. Okay, every Catholic saint, to get sainthood, they had to do 2 miracles. The fact of the matter is, so what are we tying? So you're tying it, weren't really miracles. Point is because it's not on your team. That's what you're saying. So it's not on your team. So already you're going to say you're not going to believe it. And what do you think they say?
Does that disprove
they say. What do you think they say? They say because they're not on the team. The truth of the matter is if you're already into it. Point is, if someone comes up to me and says, I used to believe A, now I believe B because something happened. Well, listen, but if your person says, I always believed A, and you know this, here's further proof for A, wait a second, you're already biased.
Yeah.
What's you're really getting to? The fact is what do you do with your own inherent bias? The point is that people argue their positions, and it's very interesting arguing their positions, and it's a position that they're arguing because it's a position they want to argue, and there's a certain bias. Yeah. And when they hear someone say something differently, it's like all of a sudden they get, they are able to tear it apart. Mm. I've seen so many times where I've seen Jewish events where people, oh, what a great event! Such good and such good points at the event. Then I heard this was back when I was in university. So I hear someone did an event, and I was like, "Ooh, what a good event!" And then some non-Jewish group, some Christian group did an event, and the same people said the other event was such a good event. Did you see how weak it was, and loopholes and so on? And I heard the person say that. I said, "What are you talking about? The same critiques that you're giving against this Christian event, you could have given against a Jewish event."
Right.
The fact is that that's what you're really raising.
So what do you do with that?
Okay, so that's what you're really raising.
There's a rabbi, I heard the story, which rabbi was it who went to an NCSY event, or something similar to an NCSY event, and he saw the singing and dancing before it, and he's like, the Christians do this.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is when they came up with the codes, it's a class example, the codes in the Bible. Oh, great proof and so forth and so forth.
There's even better mathematical validation of the Torah from this book written by Howard Shore called.
Wait a second. Let me just. Okay, the codes came out, so everyone was so excited by it. Okay, so it's going to prove the validity of Torah, and it doesn't work in the New Testament, so forth and so forth. And it got a big write-up in some statistical journal.
Right.
And then when it started getting really, people were actually buying it. Some people wrote into the statistical journal and said, "Wait a sec, we thought it was a joke article in the statistical journal." Okay, because the truth is, in any mass amount of data, you can always find some statistical validity. So there was a real strong attack upon the codes, the biblical codes.
Right.
And I always said that one of the greatest things that Kodesh Baruch Hu sent us was one of the leading critics of the biblical codes was a professor at Harvard who happened to be a frum guy, and I found out I had smicha, right? And he was one of the strongest people critical because by doing so it didn't become, look at the Orthodox Jews, they're off the wall. Basically showed out. Now one of the things he did is he did a whole bunch of codes on, I think on Moby Dick, to try and show what happened. Okay, but what no one knows about is when they came out with these big codes, you know what did the Hebrew Christians do, i.e. Jews for Jesus? Found a whole bunch of codes in Isaiah 53. Jesus this, Messiah this. The fact of the matter is that you want to buy codes. I remember an article I read about some of these I think it was on codes or some other things, some other proofs of God proofs. He said, you know something, if you're going to start giving these type of proofs, then you have to accept this article said you have to accept the flip side. That if the proofs are proven wrong, you got to accept that you're wrong. Now, are you willing to do that with your emunah? Okay? So no, you're not. So therefore, don't bring up those proofs.
Right.
The fact is, though, the fact is that anyone brings something out for their own bias, it really supports it's really supporting their bias. The issue that exists is like this. See, what I find is significant in my own perspective. What I find from the history of Yiddishkeit is it has an interesting starting point, and that is the struggle of the human being to understand truth, or to try and have a relationship with truth, or try and fathom truth. And one of the things that's so significant is how Judaism accepts the fact that a person struggles, and that a person could not necessarily accept the truth even if he is struggling hard to get it. For example, in Halacha Tinik Shenishva, Halacha Tinik Shenishva says that if someone is brought up, like the Rambam's specific language is someone is brought up by a Karaite, right? And the Karaites knew about the Rabbinites. They knew there were other people who were brought up. But he says, someone brought up by a Karaite, he's a Tinik Shenishva. He's not held responsible for not following halacha. What the Rambam is really saying is that your knowledge of truth, and it comes to the struggle.
Right.
Now, there's people like the Chazon Ish who extends beyond that and so forth. The Chazon Ish made a statement in some idea that what else needs in the Gloim, well, open miracles. We're not just talking about but open miracles.
Yeah.
Then a person may not have enough proof to accept this. Fact is when you look at religions who really say this is the truth and you're going to hell if you don't abide by it, they have a very, very straightforward understanding of faith. There's faith, you believe, you really should believe, and if you don't believe, you're evil. Okay? That's really what, let's say, fundamentalist Christianity is that way. Right? You don't believe in Jesus, you're going to hell. Because the fact is, what it's saying is faith is obvious, and if you're denying faith, that's an indication of your evil.
Yeah.
Okay? In Islam, you see this with aspects of believe in Muhammad or we'll kill you. But in Torah, in Judaism, the understanding of truth is a struggle. Right. The fact is we have concepts of Tziduk Shenishba. We have a concept of not having a straw.
Isn't there also idea if you if you give Musar, you won't necessarily. Sorry, if someone doesn't understand properly what they're doing, they don't get schar for it. Or there's machlokes on that.
The fact is that there's an idea that you to really truly get schar for your mitzvahs, you're supposed to do it with a certain kavanah and so forth and so forth. But the fact is that that's arguing here's the ideal performance of a mitzvah, and then when there's deviations from that ideal performance, you have to understand that the rewards may fall. But the point is that still works with the idea that there is. But the fact is, in the ultimate evaluation of Schar V'Onesh, that's the Kodesh Baruch Hu's call. the fact of the matter is, and by the way, you really see this in certain ways with how Judaism looked at Christianity. Okay? Now, Judaism wasn't tolerant of idolatry, and I'm not trying to say Christianity is idolatry, but the fact is, if you look at the way Judaism looked at Christianity and Islam, they saw it as a struggle by people to try and get the truth. They were off. From a Jewish perspective, they were off. But the fact is, we still recognize that they were struggling to get it. We recognize that they were trying to get it. So you have generally a remarkable response in Jewish sources. Rather than trying to declare everyone evil and going to hell, you basically find people throughout Jewish history trying to say, this person's a good person, and it's obvious he's trying to be a good person, he's obviously trying to do what's right, and so forth and so forth. He doesn't have what I think is the correct understanding of truth, but Kodesh Baruch will be understanding of it.
Two things.
Yeah.
One, would be example of that. Two, did we lose that?
What do you mean we lost that? In Christian, our attitude towards Christian, we talk about...
No. Our attitude in Judaism to someone who is secular as a religious Jew in the majority of Orthodox world is not so tolerant.
What? In terms of saying that this guy's going to hell?
This guy's going to hell, but we say like he's doing Averas.
Yeah. The fact is we still feel that this behavior is wrong. I'm not saying we accept. The issue is not to say I accept everything to be true. I accept every possibility to be true. I think that's correct. It's an idea of how you look at someone who you think is making an incorrect decision. The point is that if you understand that what is correct or not correct is a result of the struggle of understanding, then it becomes that through the struggle of understanding, you recognize that someone who doesn't get it right, it's not necessarily a bad person. When you have concepts of Tinnik Shanishra, when you have concepts like you had people basically trying to figuring out that good Christians, right? We'll sit there and say, okay, we think some of their ideas are wrong, but we think are wrong. But they're trying to be a good person. The struggle to trying to get the understanding. We say that among Jews, the idea of a Tinnik Shanishba.
But I feel like in the religious world that we have, the tolerance is coming back, but it wasn't always there. But it went away for a while. From my experience.
I'm not sure. There's a difference between tolerance and saying what you're doing is okay. There's a difference between saying to a Jew, you're eating a ham sandwich, but that's okay, versus saying, you're eating a ham sandwich, I don't think it's okay for you to eat a ham sandwich, but I'm not going to judge you, the person, okay, in terms of you doing that act, because the knowledge that that ham sandwich is incorrect is a matter of a challenge of understanding truth.
But I feel like we did judge, and things are becoming more open, and there's more variables, and there's kind of this reawakening of understanding that there's people are.
I'm not sure what you're saying that we judge. You're saying in terms of the normal community. Yeah, I think that if you're saying what the normative community acts, it's the way the normative community acts. The point is,
I'm definitely seeing change.
Well, I'm trying to go back to what I understand from the sources.
Okay.
What I understand from the sources, I look at concepts of Tinnik Shanishba. I look at concepts that where people talk about the fact that we don't have Nisan McWilliam.
Right.
Okay, raises questions of how we can prove that we're the truth of what we're arguing.
But who brings that up?
In the sources you bring it up.
But I mean in discussions in the yeshivas and discussions in the
well, that's the issue. Nobody the yeshivas aren't geared towards people who bring that up, so they're usually weeded out way before they can get to the point where they're asking those questions, because nobody answers any of the preliminary questions.
That's how they approach it, but yeah.
Well, I shouldn't have to worry about wording my questions when I have questions about religion. There should be people who either have the ability to answer that or know where to go to get answers for that.
Well, in terms of wording, I mean that, or just like there's a way of doing everything, right? Like if you go up and say, "Listen, Rabbi," this from my issue experience at least is that if you say, "Rabbi, I have an issue and I need to discuss this for myself, and I'm not trying to be a smart ass. I'm not trying to challenge the system for my own personal gain. I'm just doing it out of pure honesty to myself." Then they'll probably answer you. If you're doing
but you know what? A lot of times when you have these serious questions, you put it behind those facades because a lot of these places seem too judgmental to people who are asking these questions, so they have to put it behind a facade. And then, the rabbis just kind of either dismiss it or tell them go to hell. So there's really no... Yes, I admit you should be able to approach them honestly, but a lot of these places have too much of an aura of judgment.
There's a matter... What happens is yes, there's a matter of being respectful to another person.
Right.
Okay? And relate to people in a respectful manner in how you ask your questions.
Right.
Not any time, especially in the school system where you're teaching with adolescents and so forth, especially within a environment that creates a certain type of pressure of conformity.
Right.
It may not be so easy to ask a question with respect. That's one problem. That's one issue. So the fact is maybe you have to understand that there may be a little bit of tension within the person. The fact is, though, is that what I'm presenting, I think, is something which is you may not find in the normative community. To me, the struggle of truth is a struggle. Okay? I've pointed out many times, the Rambam never wrote Ani Mamin B'Emunah Shlema. That's an apiyut that was written based upon the Rambam's Yud Gimel Ikarim. Now, was the Rambam pretty, in certain ways, I think, somewhat dogmatic? Yeah, possibly. But the fact of the matter is anyone involved in the struggle for truth understands it's a struggle.
Is Emunah Shlema not accessible?
The fact is that I don't even know what it means. The point is psychologically, what does it mean? I don't know. The fact is, though, is that the most I can ever say is, and I find this I wrote this an article. I think if you look on my website, on the initial website, you'll find an article, Lefi Aniyas Dati, which is the way everyone introduced the defense of their position. Lefi Aniyas Dati, according to the poverty of my thought. In other words, I'm a human being. Okay? I can only do the best I can do is with the knowledge I have. Okay? So the point is, I try to come to conclusions to the best of my ability. Okay? To think that, and I've written about this extensively in terms of the understanding of the significance of doubt, okay, in the religious experience. Dogmatism comes about from someone saying, I'm right. And I know I'm right because I'm right. And what we think is the greatest religious statement where a person says, I'm absolutely right. Well, based on what? The fact of the matter is because you think you're right? Because the point is, if you have a Lefi Aniyas Dati, if you have a little bit of doubt about yourself, you can't be a dogmatist. You won't fly planes into buildings. Because you sit there and say, gee, how do I know I'm right? So therefore the knowledge of Torah is a knowledge that's based on a system that says the human being is in a struggle of truth.
Right.
Okay, so the one thing I find within Torah is an understanding of a struggle of truth. When I come down to my conclusions, this is what I think is correct.
But you still have to have that struggle. Even so, when you're doing the struggle and you say, I don't know. Okay, so that's not saying you should give up.
No, that's not obviously. And the fact is, you come to conclusions. People have challenged me about my understanding of Torah. Do I accept Torah Sinai? Yes. Do I understand the challenges of accepting Torah Sinai? Yes. Okay? Okay? Can I give you, I can sit down with people and say, here the argument. Most people have these arguments for Torah Sinai. Okay? Have you ever spoke to someone who has ever challenged you on that? No. I have the best proof for Torah Sinai. Have you ever heard anyone blow you apart? I sat down with people and say, okay, give me the arguments against it. And then I heard the arguments, then I heard other arguments for it, and so forth. So, the fia is daiti. And the truth is, I recognize that I'm biased. Why am I biased? Because I was brought up a certain way. Okay, I didn't do the same investigation of Buddhism. Okay, the fact is my understanding of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and this is where you get into your idea of understanding of God. My understanding of God is one who understands the struggle with truth. The fact that some guy in outer Borneo, right, has never heard of Torah Sinai, has never heard of Judaism, so forth and so forth. What's his struggle? What does he have struggled with? I don't know. Coach Baruch was a struggle, but Christianity always had a classic question. If you have to believe in Jesus in order to be saved, what is someone in Northern Borneo, born in some village in Northern Borneo, how could he ever hear about these things? So, according to some views of Christianity, the guy's not saved. So, if he's not saved, how can it be? Because he really does know. He really has it inside him that he knows. So a lot of people say the faith is already inside you.
People say in Judaism, you say that people want to do they just don't know it yet.
Okay,
the soul is screaming.
But those are arguments. The fact of the matter is that those are arguments. The truth is that there's struggles and you see these statements. He's taking these statements, and you understand the complexity of those statements. Because the person, if a person comes up and says, you sit there and says, he really knows there's a Torah, he really knows there's a Torah Sinai, then how's their concept of Tinnik Shanishba? Doesn't Tinnik Shanishba say the guy doesn't really know or doesn't really accept it as true, and we don't hold him culpable because he didn't accept it? That's exactly my point. So the fact is, from the Jewish perspective, we understand the struggle of truth. And we understand that the struggle of truth is trying to move. So for every person, there's a different growth curve. If you're born from, not born from, born not Jewish, whatever, but there's a different growth curve. The fact is that the starting point in Judaism is that the growth curve comes from the struggle of trying to understand. And in that struggle of trying to understand, therefore, when a person does have questions in yeshivas, these are the people you have to talk to. Because the fact is you have to understand that there are questions, and part of what Judaism is about, the thing that always hit me about Torah, is the fact that Torah has this understanding, and therefore Torah doesn't start screaming everyone's going to hell.
So I have a question, because in terms of my, I guess, opinion as deity, and also seeing in other people, you have to, on one side you have the ultimate question, is that what we're doing, like 100% proof in, I guess, Torah, Muna, Mesiva Shalim, right? I know everything perfectly and fully, which you can't really get. So, and when you're in the process, of investigating, you have questions, you look at things, but you also build on how to be a Jew.
That's true. The fact is that there's a process that goes on, but the process is a process that's unending because there's always the limitation of being human. I mean, Rav Asher Turner once pointed out to me in the Rambam. What does the Rambam says our whole purpose of life is to know God, and then what does he also say? Is no human being can ever really know God, right?
Right.
The point is,
which some people call a cop-out.
What?
Which some people will call a cop-out.
But that's not the point. The point is, it's very much in that process of the struggle.
Right.
Okay. I mean, is it true that if you are dogmatic and create certain structure of a dogmatism. Certain people won't deviate.
Certain people.
Right. The fact is that works for some people and deviate, because if you raise questions, they'll start leaving the faith or whatever. The point is other people, if you don't raise questions, they're going to leave the faith. The point is what's really going on over here. What's really going on is that we're all involved in the struggle of truth. Okay? And the thing that always hits me is that I say that as a person who's a believer in Orthodox Judaism, but one of the things that always got me in Orthodox Judaism is the fact that it recognizes the struggle of truth that I'm involved in.
Because the Torah does.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the point is that person asked me, do I believe in God? Yes. What does that mean? That means that pursuant to what I see, I come to the conclusion, God, can I sit there and say that it's Emunah Shalema? That's 100%. Well, is there no doubt? Of course there's doubt, because the fact is that there's challenges in life, there's questions, and so forth and so forth. But my understanding is that this is what I think is correct. Okay, now, does that lead to a subjective sort of like type of understanding of truth? No, if I believe this is correct, I believe that other people think they're correct, and then I can sit there and say, listen, how do I look upon their perception of being correct?
But it's not balanced necessarily, because if you were to...
No, it's up to Kosh Baruch Hu to make the decision.
No, that's not what I mean in terms of balance. I mean in terms of, like, let's say if you were an educated individual and you wanted to make a real decision on something, you would investigate all sides.
Mm-hmm.
However, when it comes to Jewish growth, if you were to actually do that, you wouldn't.
You're right.
You wouldn't
Absolutely.
get anywhere.
Absolutely. Once you
So
make
there's
decisions.
so there's a bias.
Yeah. That's absolutely.
Not only that, there's an encouraged bias.
Yes. The bias affects my decision. The fact is that's very much part of it.
Right.
The fact is what hits me though is that my understanding of a Kodesh Baruch Hu basically accepts that as a reality for all humanity. So when I see in the sources, when they start accepting Christians, they're saying that Christians are maybe deemed people who follow Shem as Bnei Noach and so forth and so forth, or maybe understood like there was one, I think I saw an article from Henkin where Henkin said that the entire Western world today are Mechasidim Masa Olam, right? Which means Christians and Muslims are Mechasidim Masa Olam. Now, does he really mean Mechasidim Masa Olam according to the Rambam? The Rambam is a very technical definition of Chassidus Olam, but he basically is saying, listen, these are people who they're moral, they're trying to do what's right and so forth, and the fact is that I'm not going to. I'm you know. The point is that as long as they're involved in the struggle of trying to understand, the point is but that doesn't mean that I think that they're necessarily now correct.
There's an issue with. I was always taught that Jews have the power to change and non-Jews don't, and it's, well, go to any AA meeting and you'll see that non-Jews have just as much power to change as Jews.
Could this be just
what?
The distinction that's presented between Jews and non-Jews, there's a lot of differences. It's for another time, but the fact is that what is the distinction between a Jew and a non-Jew? So a lot of people talk about the Yiddish and neshama.
Right.
Jews have a different neshama than non-Jews. That was a concept that was presented by the Kuzari. Baal Tanya says a similar concept, although the Kuzari's distinction between the Yiddish and neshama and the non-Yiddish neshama is vastly different than Baal Tanya's distinction. But there's a lot of people argue the Rambam had no patience for that argument. When he was asked what the distinction between a Jew and a non-Jew by Avad Yehiger, he did not touch that argument.
What did he say?
He says that Jews were distinguished by Avraham Avinu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a difference by giving them Torah. And therefore Jews may be different because they are products of the study of Torah.
Right.
There's nothing inherently different between Jews and non-Jews in terms of their souls.
Is it true that
That's a Rambam's
Judaism
position.
used to go through either parent until sometime?
That's not an argument from that's a second argument from halachic argument. There was a question before Har Sinai and after Har Sinai. After Har Sinai, it's always after the mother. Before Har Sinai, they went after the father. And how do we know that? Because Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were Jews because they were the sons of Avram. Yitzchak was a Jew because
they were Jews.
They were within that. I mean, they were in that mishpacha. Okay. I mean, the fact is that. But the point is, there's distinction between Har Sinai and not Har Sinai. I mean, people point to the fact that Yitzchak was deemed to be Avram's son, and the father of Jewish people. That shows you they had patrilineal descent. Yeah, it was before Har Sinai. It doesn't mean that much.
Well, they say it has to do with the fact that it's easier if you have one mother, so you know who the father is.
You have something that's something that's a side argument. I mean, the point is what the big thing that always attracted me to Judaism, or one of the things I've always saw in the Torah perspective, and you're going to find that other rabbis don't say this, other people don't say this, is from the Torah perspective, there was a recognition of the challenge of understanding, the challenge of doubt, and the challenge of the struggle of trying to understand. And that's very much part and parcel of the Jewish perspective. And we never started with faith and saying anyone who doesn't have this faith is going to hell.
Where do you see that, the idea of like the struggle with the Avos?
The Avos?
Yeah, like a struggle of faith.
Avraham Avinu went to is a total. The truth is that there's a big disagreement in the Medrash. It's interesting because you have this other perception from Avraham didn't have it because he had the Yiddish neshama and he already knew. But you have an interesting machlokas. I mean, it's a lot of different sides. But the fact is that when did Avraham Avinu discover the truth of one God? So you have two midrashim. One says 3 years, and one says 40 years. Right? So the point of the matter is that's a fundamental machlokas. The 3-year machlokas actually is the big medrash that's brought down by the Kuzari. Kuzari, one who says the Yiddish neshama has a certain feeling of faith in God, and therefore he says that Avraham at 3 sort of had a feeling about from his neshama about the truth of this.
I thought that doesn't even show up till you're 13.
What?
I thought that doesn't show up.
That's the Yiddish neshama comes out. The Yetzer Tov doesn't come out. I mean, you're presenting a good question. The fact of the matter is, Avraham Avinu with the struggle still is a struggle if he had that. According to the other viewpoint, he didn't believe in one God until he was 40 because he struggled. He went 2 points. He said, "Is the sun God?" Then he figured out, well, the sun can't be the God because the moon takes over at night. Then the sun comes back in the day. So he struggled back and forth. The fact of the matter is that in many ways, all of Jewish thought is a struggle of trying to understand. When you learn, you're basically involved in trying to understand.
So how does that work though when you're given a path?
When you're given a path.
Like on the one hand, you're supposed to struggle and understand. On the other hand, it's like very straightforward.
What's straightforward? Judaism straightforward?
Do this, do that. Do this, do that.
God didn't write it that way.
No.
Well, what's Torah Shabbat Peh?
That's exactly it. Torah Shabbat Peh is a struggle to understand.
Well,
Ramosh is very adamant. Ramosh Pais is very adamant with that.
You can be a very good Jew without understanding like what you're actually, or without challenging what you're doing.
You got the mitzvahs the same as Liza says. I think what he's saying,
The point is that you're going through a whole question of what is this religion about. Okay, the fact is that there's people who argue why did God reveal anything? That's just people struggle with trying to understand moral correctness and so forth and so forth. God got involved in the moral discussion of what's right and what's wrong. Why? Why don't you just leave people figure out what's right and what's wrong? That's what you're asking about. In other words, why did God give over Torah? He could have left people to struggle with what's right and what's wrong, which is how the philosophers saw it. People understand what's right and what's wrong.
No, I'm asking.
So what are you? So the point is that from Torah, it's not black and white either. You have to struggle to try and understand.
But I feel like you can practice Judaism, learn the laws, learn Torah, and not actually struggle with the fundamentals of faith.
Okay. You're right. There are people who don't struggle with the fundamentals of faith.
I'm gonna shake my little.
You're right.
But the fact is,
the fact is that you're right. You're bringing examples of individuals who are doing that. Okay, so that's fine. Okay, what I'm saying is from my view of the system is one that accepts a value in struggle. Now, are there people who don't have struggles? They ask the rabbi what to do, they follow the halacha. They're very much about, there are people like that. There are people who basically say, I ask the halacha, I follow it. They're very much involved in doing mitzvot and so forth and so forth. But if you take a step back, halacha is a process of struggling to find out what a Kodesh Baruch Hu wants you to do, and it's not easy. It's analysis. And then when you look back in terms of faith, it's an analysis. The point is I'm not saying, listen, there's some people who don't have struggles. Am I saying they should have struggles? No, but I'm saying that people who do have struggles, they can see that the struggles exist within the system.
But analysis of the halacha is more to do with within the mechanics of the halacha. We're talking about whether or not you acknowledge there's something called halacha to begin with.
The fact that's right, and the fact is once you understand that you're involved with thinking, and you have to think through things and so forth, how do you get to conclusions? You have to think.
But you don't have conclusions really, because you can't really understand anything, because God is the only one who can really understand what these things are.
The point is that therefore you have to. In other words, all I'm saying is that given reality,
right,
where God's not. There's no voices from heaven saying, "This is right, this is wrong." Yeah. Okay, do this, don't do that. I want to remind everyone that God's not yelling from society. I exist. When you lived in the midbar, did you have a question whether God existed? No. It wasn't faith. People talk about leap of faith and the challenge of religion is leap of faith. They didn't need a leap of faith in the midbar. Yeah, you were surrounded by the Ananiya Kavod. You ate because of the man. So there was a different challenge you had in that life. So the point is that that's one type of challenge. We don't have Ananiya Kavod now. We don't have around us. We don't have that. So the fact is people ask questions. All I'm saying is that if you look at the nature of Judaism, the fact is in the midbar they had questions also. And the problem was what was the right answer, what was the right question, what was the wrong question. When the Meraglim posed their question, it turned out to be that something wrong about their question. If you really look at it, they thought something. Korach, there was something really wrong about his question. But you read stories. I mean, you read. Like you don't understand who you're dealing with. Like Korach. Oh yeah, he was a bad guy. Okay. On Ben Pellet was part of Korach's group, right? If you look there, one of the names is On Ben Pellet, right? The first four, right? Datan and Avir, these were one of the guys, right? How come On Ben Pellet wasn't around anymore? When the actual rebellion started, what happened to On Ben Pellet?
Didn't his wife sit in front of the tent?
With what?
No hair cover.
Hey! So they say that she sat in front of her in a tent,
so
and therefore Datan and Aviram came by to get on, and they saw his wife with her hair uncovered, and they ran away. Now think about this: Korach, Datan and Aviram, ooh, really evil guys, right? They wouldn't go near On Ben Pellet's wife because her hair wasn't covered. So what are you talking about? What kind of people are you talking about? That's number one. Okay. So, but you're talking about then you have another machlokas by the Meraglim, right? Which were like really remarkable people, right? And Kalev ben Yefuna goes and davens by the Maras Machpelah, because he says, I really want help to try and make a decision, because the other Meraglim, they might be right. Okay. What happens though? But where do you really finally see the aspect of this? It was by Reuben, Gad, Chasei, Shevet, Menashe. When they came to ask for the land on the other side of the Jordan, Moshe was like beside himself. He says, "Don't you see the problem already with this attitude? You're already asking for this. You're already asking for that." I mean, he was so upset. We're going to have more problems. So no, he thought it was another Meraglim situation, right? And the fact is Kosh Baruch Hu said, there's an answer to this. Why? Because they asked it a certain way. They had a struggle also. The truth of the matter is that Judaism always dealt with issues. It always dealt with struggles. Struggle of faith wasn't a struggle in the Midbar because it was obvious that God existed.
Well, there wasn't much faith. They saw.
Right, they saw. So the fact is that they dealt with, but there was always struggle. What does human beings have to do? What was the big struggle in the Midbar? So my theory in the Midbar was the fact that the struggle was they knew that, and I think this was the struggle in Meraglim, because otherwise the Meraglim don't make any sense. They said, listen, God, if you're gonna defeat the enemies in Canaan, if you're gonna do to Canaan what was done in Egypt, hey, there's no question of what's going to happen. But my understanding is that somehow we have to start taking over. Right. And therefore it has to be that we have to do it. And I don't think we're ready to do it. We're not ready yet. And if you look at Kalev ben Yefuna's response, his first response is, we can do it. Doesn't then go on and say, Kosh Baruch Hu do it. He says, we can do it. And his argument is we have to believe that we're able to do it. The point is that he says we're able to do it. The truth is that there was a certain point in time where everyone in the desert knew that there's a time where God's not going to keep doing the open miracles. We're going to have to start taking over some of the responsibilities in life. And the question is that what happens at that point? The truth is Judaism's about our struggle. Our struggle has a lot to do with understanding truth, the challenge of truth, and so forth. And these are all struggles. Mm. The point is that different people have different struggles. Some people don't have struggles. I think the problem is, I think what your real point is those people who have struggles, they then put down the people who have struggles. Sure. Right? And they make it seem that having a struggle itself is a problem. Now, the truth is, in normative religions, that is. If you look at right-wing Christianity, right-wing Islam, the very fact that you raise a doubt already is considered to be an indication of weakness in your religion. The point is that I'm just saying from a Jewish perspective, I think that's totally incorrect. Doubt recognizes the fact that you are challenged.
But the problem is a lot of the Jewish places are starting to become like the right-wing Christian and Muslims in that way.
Yeah, and that's
to the left.
The fact is that
maybe
that's exactly it. And the fact is once you get involved in what I'm saying, you just understand that Torah really struggle in dealing with these issues is really part of what Torah really is about. Now, what does that necessitate? It necessitates you being able to be an individual thinker. I mean, one of the things that happens is that when you have a more dogmatic perception, then there's this stronger imposition on buying the answer of one person, or buying or accepting what you are taught, and so forth and so forth. If you accept the idea of struggle, then really what you have to accept is the value of your own individuality. Right. So I point this out to people that who is Reish Lakish's Rabbi?
Rabbi Yochanan.
Right. And who is Reish Lakish's who was Rav Yonason's major arguer?
Rabbi Lakish.
Right. The fact of the matter is the success of Rav Yochanan. It's Rav Yochanan. The success of Rav Yochanan as a Rebbe is that he created someone who was able to argue with him. In our modern world, for example, Virgil Schechter will make the statement that he that about positions he disagrees with the Rav, who was his Rebbe. The point is that there's an attitude of a Rebbe wants to create a person's only a follower, or whether a Rebbe wants to create someone who can be someone who has the ability to even disagree with him, and that kind of attitude of a Rebbe comes about from developing individuality. And that's perhaps what happens over there. But in order to develop, if you believe in the struggle of truth, then you have to give over to the individual the ability to think and analyze.
Cool.
Anyways, we dealt with that question. The fact is that
I think that was the
is that
Wait, what was the what question you wanted to bring up, Alex?
I don't know, maybe another time.
okay.
I have a question though. Why is Shibim Panim not a paradox?
The fact is, what it really is truth.
Well, also the question. Okay.
Truth is much more of a.
Let me elaborate on the question. People say that we've spoken about in previous year that when you look at the other denominations of Judaism that, according to our beliefs, aren't really Judaism, the whole thing is they consider themselves part of the Shibim Panim. However, we say they're not Shibim Panim, and then they'll kind of argue by saying that, well, our Shibim Panim also has machlokes, that they're all different, and we argue that, well, really it's the same Shulchan Aruch.
The fact of the matter is that you're arguing about
central beliefs
about there's a certain parameter of what's of here's a grouping. These are the parameters within this grouping, and then there's other groupings. People who say Shibim Panim should expand to the entire spectrum of modern day Judaism, they're trying to present one type of parameter.
Right.
The fact is that parameter was not the classic parameter that's being presented by the term Shibim Panim. Shibim Panim, the Torah, was with people who accepted that there was Torah Misinai. If you're not accepting Torah Misinai, you're not. Now, the truth is I wrote an article once called Tolerance. It's not up on our website, where I talk about different forms of tolerance. There's a form of tolerance we have towards people within the parameters, Shibim Panim the Torah, and there's a certain form of tolerance for people who are outside the parameters. The fact is that leads into what are the repercussions in terms of things. Like, for example, let me give you an example. There's between a person and a thing. If you have a machlokes in halacha of whether something's kosher or not, okay? This Rav holds it's kosher. You hold it's not, okay? And then someone else who follows this Rav as their posek says, I like to eat it. Can you please pass it to me? That's not considered to be a problem with neighbor. Because for the person eating it, it is kosher. Okay, that's in the chefsa. Even though you hold it's aser, the person holds it's kosher, therefore that's not considered this neighbor. However, if it was a Reform rabbi, it was bacon, right? And a person said, I'm a Reformed Jew, I don't think bacon is prohibited, right? You would be overlifting it and giving it to them. But what about the person actually eating? You have tolerance to him as an individual. I'm not going to say that this person's evil or not, because as an individual, that's Chodesh Baruch Hu's cheshbon. But in terms of the chefsa of bacon being usher or not, the Reformed Judaism position that's not a problem is not one that is accepted within the halachic system.
On a slightly notice, I have a shaila. If you have a situation where you're with a Jew, he has non-kosher food in his possession, and you have the ability to destroy it or throw it out.
It's not yours.
It's not yours.
Not yours.
Unless they ask you to pass it to them.
That's a problem.
How about if you're in school, a boarding school, and you have something non-kosher? Are they allowed to throw it out? This particular case, it's gum.
It depends upon the rules of the boarding school when you accepted going there.
Fair enough.
Okay? Okay.